thank you everyone for coming to our second conference. Um, and also thank you so much to Dr. Sierra yourself, for taking time out of your day to come talk with us for like an hour. So we have Essential Health elevating elevating wellness through equity and environment with Dr. Sierra Favorite. So, who are we? So basically, Scientology is as an organization, we are a not youth run nonprofit that like aims to introduce like intricate scientific concepts in a manner that is fun and comprehensive to like teens. And we kind of serve as like a free resource for students who like don't have access to like science in general. And do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Dr. Xiara Favorite. I am a full-time public health professional working as an environmental epidemiologist in county government. And I'm also a part-time content creator where I have a lifestyle and wellness blog called Z's Essentials, where I talk a lot about post-grad life, my experience in grad school, which I'm sure we'll get into today, and public health content as of recently. So I'm super excited to tie in, all of my interests together and to inform you guys of my journey in public health. So very happy to be here.
Attendees, if you have any questions, we can like so you can send them in the chat, and then at the end of our session, we can go over your questions. So our first section, education and career path. So first question, what inspired you to pursue a Doctor of Public Health degree?
Yes. So I absolutely love this question because people ask me this all the time, especially on my TikTok account, Z's_essentials, where again, I talk a lot about my career in public health. And so this is very much so a common question that I get. And it really goes back to when I was studying biology in undergrad at Xavier University of Louisiana in New Orleans, Louisiana. And during my studies, I had learned about Cancer Alley. So, Cancer Alley is this 85-mile stretch of land in New Orleans, Louisiana, where it is home to over 200 petrochemical facilities. So, industries that emit toxic air pollutants such as formaldehyde, particulate matter, and things of that nature. And so, for years, residents in these communities have been concerned that their health was being impacted by local industry. Majority of the communities that live in Cancer Alley are low income Black communities. And so when I learned about this and I learned that a lot of residents were actually passing away from cancer, there were a couple studies that did show that that area had some of the highest cancer incidences in the US. It really intrigued me and made me wonder, well, how does the environment truly play a role in our health? And so I had also wondered, well, is this a common phenomena that's around the US and the world? And that's where I learned about environmental justice. So essentially, low income minority communities are often sitting near industries that emit toxic air pollutants, which then impacts their health. And so as a scientist, I really wanted to learn, well, how does the environment impact our health? And so that is why I decided to pursue a Master of Science degree first. So I did pursue my master's in environmental toxicology. And I learned quite a lot about environmental toxicology. How do we come into contact with environmental pollutants? I learned a ton about environmental regulations and laws and policies that can impact our health. And for my master's thesis, it was heavily lab based, so I will say I was in a lab pretty much 24/7. And I knew that as my future career, I didn't want that for myself because I don't know if you've ever done research before in a lab, but it can be pretty cold in there. There's no windows a lot of times. And so I just felt really secluded. And honestly, I wanted to see my research be implemented into a community-based setting. And so that's where I started to look into public health programs for my doctoral degree. And so I was specifically interested in environmental health. And what I noticed is that doctoral environmental health programs were mainly housed under public health programs. And so that was actually my first time learning about the world of public health. And it just really opened up a whole new door and avenue for myself in terms of a future career path. And so ultimately, I decided to pursue my Doctor of Public Health degree in public health sciences with a concentration in environmental health. Well, one, because I was actually offered free tuition to study environmental health at Texas A&M University. But also, I really connected well with my future PI, where I already knew what my dissertation topic would be. So I did study environmental health, or looking at respiratory health and diseases in environmental justice communities located in Dallas, Texas. It included all of my interests of doing community-based health studies. And ultimately, it really did shape my passion for environmental health and environmental justice. And so I'm very excited that, I pursued that degree and I graduated just last year in May of 2024. And so through my TikTok account and my blog, I often talk about my grad school experience, the ups and downs of grad school, because it is definitely not an easy task to do. But yeah, I'm so excited about successfully passing my DrPH program and just talking more about what a DrPH consists of.
Wow, thank you so much for that fabulous answer.
Oh,
Um,
yes, of course.
Now moving on to our next question. We can't. How did your academic journey at Texas A&M University help shape your passion?
Yes, so I thoroughly enjoyed my DrPH program at Texas A&M University. I took ample courses where I learned more about environmental toxicology, environmental and occupational health diseases. I also really strengthened my data analysis skills, which is something that I often tell students, like that's a core strength that you need to have with public health is learning how to look at data, how to use, statistical methods as well as computational programs such as R, SAS, or Stata to really determine, what are the trends in this data and then how you can report those findings. So I really made it my mission to take a lot of data analysis courses, whether it was in biostatistics. I took a course on R because I wanted to learn more about it and how it would apply to my dissertation and things of that nature. I also took a health policy course, which I think is something that is another unique strength about public health. We, especially as of recently, with a lot of regulations here in the US that has been changing in relation to public health, it's really important to stay abreast of what's going on in your communities as well as nationally. And so taking that health policy analysis course, it really helps me to learn more about, what goes into a policy being made, especially at the federal level, because it's not as easy or simple as you may think. It's a very complex process. So I really enjoyed learning more about that. I also took a lot of courses relating to environmental sampling, how to do soil sampling, how to do air sampling, and things of that nature. And so just having that field work also really served as a core strength for my dissertation work. And then, of course, one difference that I always say between a doctor of public health or DRPH and a PhD program is that specifically for DRPH programs, they have a certain component known as the leadership component that every student has to take a class on a leadership course. And so I took a leadership course throughout my program at Texas A&M University, and I really enjoyed it because I was able to learn more about, how to have a leadership position in the public health field, what that looks like. We often had speakers during every class who would come to us and talk to us about their own journey, and we really formulated the skills that we needed, including, communication skills that you need in order to talk about, your research and things of that nature. So that's one thing I will say about a DRPH program that I loved is that they really tailored students to learn more about leadership opportunities within the public health field. I'm trying to think of other classes that I took, but there were just a lot of beneficial classes that I took at Texas A&M. But of course, in conduit with that, I also did research, like heavy research for my dissertation. And again, as I mentioned before, I studied air pollution and respiratory health in environmental justice communities in Dallas, Texas. And so it was a very complex project. I implemented a community health survey in the communities that I worked with just to note, what is their perception of air pollution? And then also, just to note if there were any types of respiratory diseases in those communities as well, because this was the first time that an environmental health study was being done in their neighborhoods. And as I always tell people, there are a lot of communities that have lived experiences where they know that something is happening to their health due to their environment. But in order to really enact change or to get those industries out of communities, you have to show the evidence. So you have to have data to note, hey, these are actually the air pollution concentrations that are in these neighborhoods. Hey, the perception of people living in a polluted environment, it actually can impact their health physically, mentally, and things of that nature. And so another major component of my dissertation work, I also utilized air monitors, local air monitors, to note exactly what the pollutants were in these neighborhoods. And so that's a really important component that I was able to do within my dissertation work. And I'm really just thankful for Texas A&M University because they really pushed us to work hand in hand with communities, to travel to conferences and speak and present our research. And traveling to conferences also will help you to build up your communication skills, as well as for you to network. So networking is also a really huge component of being a student at Texas A&M, because ultimately it can help you to land a job in the future or internships and things of that nature. So my academic journey at A&M really did shape my passion for environmental justice, community health, and public health. So I'm very grateful for my experience there.
That's a great answer. I don't think I added this question, but like, why did you choose Texas AMH over like other universities?
hmm Yes, so I actually applied to four doctoral programs total. I was accepted into three PhD programs, and I was accepted into one DrPH program, which of course is Texas A&M. So ultimately, I did decide to pursue my doctoral degree at Texas A&M was because again, one, they did offer me full funding. They covered my tuition as well as offered me a stipend for a graduate research position. And essentially, that's a position that most doctoral students should have if they want to have their research funded, as well as just being paid in general while pursuing your dissertation work. Because as I mentioned before, grad school is not an easy task. And so if you're able to pursue your graduate degree while not having a full-time role, that will help you to really focus on, your academic studies and your dissertation work because it can be a lot. Not saying it can't be done, but it can definitely be a lot. And so I'm super grateful that A&M have provided me funding opportunities for that. And not only that, one thing that I always encourage students to do if you are pursuing some type of doctoral degree, for every program that you're interested in, you should absolutely look at the program's website, see the different professors that are in that program, and usually they will note on their website, their research interests, what type of projects that they're working on. And if any of those professors, if their research interests align with yours, I highly encourage you that while you're doing your application, for you to reach out to them via email and just say, hey, my name is so and so. I plan to apply to your program and be an upcoming student in the fall of 2026. And I was wondering if you had 30 minutes in your schedule to just do an informal informational interview where then you can just introduce yourself to them. You can ask them questions about your research and you can tell them, hey, I plan to be a student. Will you have an open will you have an open position in your lab for when I would become a student? Every program that I applied to, I did that to note if professors have funding. And most of them will be honest with you and they'll let you know if they have funding or if they don't. And so, the professors that I did reach out to, specifically my professor at Texas A&M, she had told me that she was going to have an open position in her lab for when I would become a student there. And honestly, I think that by me reaching out to her, that really secured my full-time funding for that program. So ultimately, that is why I decided to pursue my DrPH at Texas A&M.
Oh, wow, that makes a lot of sense now.
hmm
Okay, our next question. How did your experiences outside the classroom shape your career direction?
Yes. And so another thing that I always encourage students to do is that you should do as many internships as you can because you never know what you're interested in or what you would like or enjoy until you're actually doing it. And so during my graduate school experience, I interned for multiple different sectors within the public health field. I first interned at a nonprofit organization that was locally here in my community where they actually did look at, air pollution and how the environment played a role on the community's health. And so working for a nonprofit group that was a really rewarding experience for me because you really are like hands, boots on the ground and was really hands on with that experience. And so by working with a nonprofit group, I knew that, okay, yes, I definitely know that I want to work with communities as my future career because it was truly rewarding. I also did an internship with the Environmental Protection Agency, the Region 6 office in Dallas, Texas. That was also a very rewarding experience. That was, I want to say, maybe 2022, I did that internship. That was a very rewarding experience working at the federal level because, again, like you, when it comes to like policies, laws, and everything, sometimes you can think that it's pretty straightforward and, if politicians just knew what to do, like they could easily do it. But it really is like a lot of steps that you have to go through in order to really implement any type of policy, intervention, or whatever the case may be. So learning how, environmental laws and policies were truly enacted from the federal level was also a rewarding experience for me. And just learning the ins and outs of the Environmental Protection Agency. I believe I did another internship more so on the academic level, working with another nonprofit group that looked at how social media can impact the influence of children and students learning more about environmental health, zoology, as well as veterinary diseases and things of that nature. And so that really definitely tied to, my own experiences too with my TikTok and my blog and just, learning the skills that I needed to learn to communicate to different audiences about public health, about science, and how it can really be educational for everyone. And so I definitely encourage students to always do internships, just so you can learn, like, hey, what works for me and what doesn't work for me. Then ultimately, like that led me to knowing, okay, I want to work with communities, which is why I'm currently an environmental epidemiologist working in local county government.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Mhm.
Okay, and now, how has your understanding of public health evolved, like, since you first started studying it?
Yeah, so my understanding of public health has truly evolved. Again, I'll note that when I initially wanted to apply to doctoral programs, I was not thinking about public health. I was mainly thinking about environmental health. But then when I saw that most environmental health programs were under the umbrella of public health, that's where I learned more about public health. And when I tell you, it is just such a broad field. I get this question all the time on TikTok where people, ask me, "Hey, tell me more about public health." And I'm like, "Oh, that will take me about a good 10 minutes because public health is just so broad and it encompasses so much." And so my understanding of public health has truly evolved because there's so many different sectors with it. There's biostatistics, there's health policy, there's community health, there's behavioral health, mental health and things of that nature. There's epidemiology, environmental health, of course, and it just encompasses so much. And so a lot of times too, what people don't think about is like all the different career paths that you can take with a public health degree as well. Again, becoming a community health worker, being an environmental epidemiologist, data analysis. There are tons of data analysis skills that you would learn in your public health program to where you could become a data analyst for a hospital, the government, a private industry, anything of that nature. And so I've truly learned, how big public health is and how the skills that you learn in your program can really be transferable to any type of role that you may be interested in. Even science communication, that has recently become a big deal within the public health field. And two, I think since especially COVID-19 and the pandemic, a lot of people thought like, that was public health in terms of just solely looking at COVID-19. And so I'm happy to note that I feel as though recently people have learned more and more about public health, how it's not just involves COVID-19, but it involves other respiratory diseases. It involves environmental health, again, science communication, health policy, and biostatistics and different things of that nature. And so it's a beautiful field to be into. And so I always encourage students, if you're interested in public health, to definitely do your research on what specific interests of public health would you like to pursue? Because there are just so many different paths and avenues that one could take.
Wow, that's like really cool because like it's just so broad.
It's extremely broad. And that's why when people ask me that question, I'm like, how much time do you have? Or I'll counter with, well, what are you interested in with public health? So yeah, it can be a lot.
Okay, now, question five. What advice would you give to students who are like considering graduate schools in public health? And you kind of like went over this a little bit, but you can like go more depth.
Yes. So again, as just previously mentioned, I definitely encourage students to do your research on public health. Again, there are so many different fields of public health, sectors of public health, and different things that you can do. And every public health program, especially at the graduate level, is different. Even at Texas A&M, like we recently just started having a behavioral health program. And so that's something that's new, that's evolving. But, 2 years ago, we did not have that within our School of Public Health. And so depending on your interests, you will have to see and note, what program, what school offers your desired interest. So then you could pursue that specifically. Um, Definitely again, do internships even after you during your bachelor's program or after you graduate from your bachelor's program. You can always interview or intern at your local public health department. That usually is pretty broad in it, but it gives you a good idea of what the public health field encompasses and what a day-to-day public health professional does. So of course, doing that. I would also encourage students to, create your LinkedIn account and reach out to folks on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has definitely been helpful for me and beneficial for me within my graduate program, but also in post-grad life and just sharing with people my research and also reaching out to folks for jobs and things of that nature. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. And I guess the last thing I would also encourage you to do is to not compare yourself to others or what others are doing in their journey. I believe that every student's journey, it is your own. Everyone has their own unique journey. How one person gets from A to B may not be your exact story, but that's okay. You just have to tailor your experiences to you and to not be weary if you see someone else doing something different with how they pursue their graduate degrees or their career path. And so that's one thing I've definitely been encouraging students and even myself, honestly, is to focus on your own path and your interests, that you want to help people. So go and do that and don't worry about what others are doing. So I would say that would be my advice for students who are considering public health programs.
Like really good advice, especially the part about like just being yourself and like not comparing yourself.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, and now our next section, your work life. So what inspired you to launch s- how do I
Z's.
Z Essentials, and what was your like vision behind it?
Yeah, so I started Z's Essentials, which is a lifestyle and wellness blog, back in February of 2020. I have always loved writing. I have a journal that I use pretty much every week to just journal my thoughts, my vision, my goals. I find that it's a very healthy way to really get your thoughts on paper and to let your thoughts out. And so when I started Z's Essentials, essentially it was a blog to where I talked about my post grad experience, graduating from not grad school, but graduating from undergrad. And I also talked about, my experiences with post grad depression, which is something where you often feel down or lonely and you compare yourself to others because you are not seeing where your journey is in comparison to others. And so I was nervous about that was my very first blog post talking about that. And I was nervous about posting it, but I found that there are actually a lot of students who experience the same thing. And so I'm really happy that I was able to share my experiences and that other people had similar interests as well. And I've been writing blog posts for, I want to say, 2 years until I started my graduate program for my doctorate. I'm not going to lie, a doctoral program is very hard. And so I was juggling a lot with classes, but also doing internships at the same time and working on my research. So I did take a little bit of a break from actually writing blog posts. But once I created a TikTok account just for fun, one day I just randomly posted, "Oh, come with me to the library to study for my biostatistics exam." And when I tell you, like from that point, like my content just took off because there were so many other students who just found that content to be relatable. And so I thought to myself, well, why don't I just continue to post about my experience in grad school and honestly tell people more about public health? Because at the time, too, I did not see anyone really talking about public health on TikTok. And not many people knew much about what a DrPH was or what the program consisted of. And so I think that was, one of the main reasons as to why my account took off and did really well was because it was novel in the fact that, people did not know this information. They didn't know the difference between a DRPH and a PhD, and they were just really interested in my experiences. And so I was very transparent too with the ups and downs of grad school, with public health in general, and things of that nature. And I think that people just really truly found my content to be relatable. And so now, too, as I'm a full-time public health professional, I still talk about, here's a day in the life being an environmental epidemiologist. Here are 5 recent things that I recently did as a public health girly. And I really enjoyed it because it helps me to have a good work-life balance by having fun with my career. And so it's something that I'm truly grateful for. I have been back writing blog posts on there, just talking about, the importance of going to therapy and why that's helpful and just taking care of your mental health because I always believe that you have to pour into yourself before you pour into others, and just different things of that nature. And so I'm very happy with the direction that my blog is going, these essentials. And I'm very happy to also connect with students in public health, especially, as well as other career professionals who may be interested in the public health world.
Wow, thank you for that answer. And yep. And so next question, what is your day-to-day like look like when working on these essentials or like your research?
Yes, so I'm still finding the work-life balance. Again, as I mentioned, I'm a full-time public health professional. So from 9 to 5, I'm working on my day-to-day job. So being an environmental epidemiologist, it mainly consists of doing a lot of data analysis where I would receive data requests and I would have to note different studies of, how the environment impacts local health. And then, of course, I will have to write reports on those data trends and then also communicate those findings to different stakeholders. There's also a lot of community involvement that goes with my day to day. I may often go into the community and present the findings to them or attend a community meeting and things of that nature. And so that mainly is what consists of my day to day as far as my professional life. And then after my 9 to 5, I do what I like to call my 5 to 9, where I actually work on these essentials. Where I would plan, edit, and post content. It takes a lot of time management to balance both. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes some weeks are better than others, where sometimes I may feel a little bit overwhelmed and I know I have to kind of take a step back from social media. But I found that having a schedule, so I'll usually use, Sundays to plan my content for the week just to help me out so that throughout the week I'm not worried about, oh, what should I post? Oh man, I forgot I need to edit this or I would like to post this or that. So using my Sundays to really plan and edit my content has truly been beneficial to have work-life balance. Also with my job, I make sure that at 5 p.m. I am done with my job. I close my laptop and that is enough. And I've actually established that boundary since day one of having my role because I think it's important that you have those boundaries because it really helps you to have a good work-life balance function with that. I've also been in the process lately of publishing my manuscripts from my dissertation work, and that has also been a lot. It's a very tedious process to write papers, to edit them, and then, of course, submit them to journals. And then, if the journal accepts your paper, then you have to do the edits that they require. So that can also be a lot. So I usually try to commit one evening every week to work on manuscripts so that I can also balance my research. But I think it's work-life balance is different every day, is different every week. I definitely give myself grace. And I know that if it becomes too much, I need to take a step back from what. I often believe in having social media breaks. Even though I am heavy on social media with my blog and everything, I still take social media breaks from time to time when I feel like I'm getting overwhelmed or I just need a break from looking at the news and everything like that. And so at the end of the day, like you have to do what works for you. It definitely will take a minute for you to adjust and to find that balance and to get your schedule. But as long as you have grace with yourself and know that you'll get it eventually, you'll be fine.
It's very important, especially like holding yourself like accountable for everything.
Yes, absolutely.
So now, question eight, like, how has your platform evolved like since you first started it, and like what content or like messages do you enjoy sharing like most with people?
Yes. So when I first started Z's Essentials specifically on TikTok, I was just often just talking about lifestyle and wellness content. I would talk about the different supplements that I would use in the morning to balance my health. I talked a lot about journaling, about going to therapy, and just my experience with that. But again, it wasn't until I'm going to say like my second year of my grad program for my DrPH program where I actually started to post, oh, come study with me at the coffee shop, or here are different coffee shops that I study at. Let's go to the library and work on this assignment. And that's truly where my content shifted, where I started posting more about my grad school experience and just really informing people about public health and what it all consists of. So my content has definitely changed over the last few years. And even recently, I've also been posting more lifestyle content, like, oh, spend the weekend with me. Because I also, too, like, I don't want my content to solely be focused on public health because after a while, like that can get a little boring. And I always believe that people should evolve. And if you decide to do a rebrand, absolutely do that. And so I've also been trying to balance in some more lifestyle content as well. I've been traveling a lot lately this summer, and so I've been posting more about my travel diaries and things like that. And you just have to find, what works for you and ultimately how you can make content fun for you. And so I truly believe that, to find your niche, you shouldn't post content that's not easy for you. Like, for example, I would never be like a beauty or a hair content person because that's just not something that's easy for me to do every single day. But posting about public health, something that I love, posting my day to day as an environmental epidemiologist, like that's super easy for me to do. And so you just have to find, what works for you. But definitely, I would say over the past month or two, the messaging for Z's Essentials has definitely been work-life balance. I take people along with me as I'm trying to figure out work-life balance, how to balance, being a public health professional, being a family person, hanging out with friends, things of that nature. So I think, content should evolve as your season evolves, basically.
That's really like a lot of balance.
Hmm. That's right. Some days are better than others.
Okay, and now, what strategies have you used to help like you grow your platform, like while staying true to your mission of like public health education, and, like advocacy?
Hmm. Definitely being transparent and honest with your journey. I feel like that is how your content can truly grow is when people find you relatable. And so, as I mentioned before, with my grad school experience, and even especially with post grad life, after I pursued my DRPH, I'm not going to lie, the job market was very, very tough for me when I graduated with my DRPH, as the job market is tough for a lot of folks. Um, and so, although when I graduated in May of 2024, with my DRPH, I did immediately accept a postdoc position with my university, but I knew ultimately that I didn't want to necessarily stay in academia because I really did enjoy nonprofit work as or working for the government at the time. And so while I was pursuing my postdoc position, I was also at the same time applying to jobs, and it was really tough because there were not that many roles specifically for environmental health. And so I was really trying to be strategic too on, the type of pay that I would accept and things of that nature. And it did take a while for me to land my current role. which I found that a lot of people actually have voiced like their concerns with that as well, because the job market has honestly been tough. And so I was very transparent and honest and open with my audience about my me being on the job market and how that has been going. And I'm so grateful that I did, because I really did build a community where others were experiencing the same thing. So we were able to hold each other accountable. Like, hey, did you apply to, how many jobs did you apply to this week? Or, hey, did you see this job posting here? Like, I think this might be of interest to you. And I was even posting, resources to others about, hey, these are the tools that I used to obtain my recent job. And here's a spreadsheet that I used to look at jobs every single day that's specifically tailored for public health folks. And so, definitely, I'm glad that I was very transparent and real about my experiences, because I feel like that's the beauty of TikTok, honestly, is that content can be so relatable. And so I think it's important to always have that. And so I truly just love showcasing public health resources. I also like recently shared, hey, these are the public health news outlets that I follow every week so that I can just stay up to date with stuff. Like, this may be of interest for you, or hey, these are 5 recent things that I learned about public health lately. And so I've really enjoyed, posting and creating content relating to public health and the community that I've built from my social media following.
Wow, that's a lot. And this is our last question that I have made. And then, so now we have our live Q&A. And if anyone has any questions, you can send them in the chat. And we'll give a few minutes for that. Well, the question in the chat, what are some commonly overlooked environmental factors that affect public health?
Oh, well, as of recently, there's been a lot of talk about how AI has been impacting low income minority communities. And when I say AI, I mean the building of the infrastructure that are needed to house those large computers to do AI. Um, if I'm not mistaken, they are currently building one of the largest AI facilities in near Memphis, Tennessee, here in the US. And unfortunately, where they are building the infrastructure, it is near a low income Black and Brown community. And they have already complained about noise pollution. So, meaning, if there's a lot of noise going on, construction and things of that nature, that can affect someone's sleeping habits, that can affect their day-to-day activities and things of that nature. And so that's one thing that could be overlooked. But there's also like a lot of pollution that could be emitted into the air from these industries and things of that nature. So definitely, I think noise pollution is something that people often overlook. Also, air pollution too, especially in terms of how it can impact maternal health. So that has actually been one of the recent studies that I've been doing as an environmental epidemiologist, is looking at tying how particulate matter exposure or PM exposure can impact maternal health outcomes. So, for instance, if someone lives in a community where there's high air pollution and they are pregnant, they are more vulnerable to experiencing adverse health effects due to their exposure to toxic air pollution. Trying to think of other environmental factors. Of course, water pollution is a big thing. There's a community that's not too far from me where they are actually noted as a Superfund site by the Environmental Protection Agency, meaning that their waters have been stated by the federal government that it's dangerous to drink the water because of possible contaminants that are in there from a waste facility that was operating for years within the neighborhood. And so It environmental health, environmental justice, it can definitely be a lot. And even as a student, as I was doing my dissertation work studying environmental justice, I would go into these communities and do research studies with them to look at how the air is impacting their health, what type of respiratory diseases are in their neighborhoods. But it was also very sad to note that, that these are people's lived experiences because as academics, we often go into these communities and we do the work and then we go home, we go back to our own safe neighborhood. And so I think it's important to always advocate for those communities, especially those who are expressing their lived experiences, especially dealing with environmental health disparities and things of that nature. So that's something I try a lot to do, especially on TikTok or with my blog or just in general conversations with others, is to try to inform them more about how the environment can impact our health.
Thank you so much for your answer. And we have one more. Are there any tips on how to balance and stay motivated with schoolwork and studying?
The motivation should be graduating. I would say that was definitely my biggest motivation for getting to the books and things of that nature. Um, Definitely have your boundaries. During the time too, I was also planning my wedding and my family was long distance. I didn't have family near Texas A&M University. And so a lot of times, there would be family events on the weekends and I would have to say, no, sorry, I can't come because I have to study or I have to go into the community and get some data and things of that nature. But it's only temporary. Like grad school is only a temporary thing. It's not a forever thing. And so I've always been true to myself in making sure that I remembered my ultimate goal, which was, gaining the skills and knowledge that I needed in order to graduate and become successful within my career path. And so, like I said, it's a temporary thing where you do have to make sacrifices. You do have to learn time management skills. I have a daily planner that I use every single day to keep myself organized, to stay on top of deadlines. So if you don't have a planner, I highly suggest that you get one. They also have electronic planners that you can use on your iPad or your computer, where you can just note your deadlines, write down your to-do list, and things of that nature. So yeah, you definitely have to stay organized when trying to balance school, work, and play. But also, give yourself grace. I will say, like every Sunday, I had used those Sundays as a no work type of day while I was in grad school, where I would literally just use it as a self-care. So self-care Sunday, where I would just tailor to myself, see what type of needs that I need. I wasn't doing no work. I was not studying or anything of that nature because I do believe that you should always have some time to yourself so that you can reset, refocus, and get back to your goals.
Thank you for that very honest answer.
hmm
And then we have one more here. So what were the most valuable things you learned from your DRPH program?
I would say the most valuable things that I learned from my DrPH program was definitely networking. Again, try to do as many internships as you can, try to attend as many conferences as you can. And I'm not gonna lie, conferences are great because you can kind of use that as kind of like a vacation time, depending on if it's in a nice city or country. But also, like, really attend those seminars. Go research beforehand, look at the agenda or brochure to see who's speaking and what type of conversations would interest you. And often, after I would attend conferences, I would find those speakers on LinkedIn and connect with them or reach out to them if I was interested in learning more about their topic or just wanted to connect with them in general. And so I would definitely PH program, they really encouraged us to go to conferences a lot and to really network as heavy as we could. Of course, again, as I mentioned before, I really love the leadership aspect of my DRPH program. I love the fact that my DRPH program, they were really trying to get us in and out. So the program is typically 3 to 4 years as compared to a PhD, which is anywhere from like 4 to 6 years because you literally hit the ground running when you start your DRPH program. Like I was literally already working on my dissertation from day one when I started the program, but that's literally just how it's tailored. I'm trying to think of something else that I really loved from my DRPH program. Again, of course, the courses, absolutely. So every program that you're interested in, please do your research on the courses that they offer. They usually do list the not the syllabus, but the course selection sheet, so where you can note, okay, what courses are being offered, what type of electives are needed, and things of that nature. So I really enjoy that my DrPH program had a variety of different courses that we can choose from, and they really gave us a lot of flexibility even on our elective courses, to where you could take courses that weren't necessarily in the public health program if they would serve of interest to you or your dissertation work. And then of course I one very, very valuable skill was my research skills that I gained from doing my dissertation in my DRPH program. Again, from day one, I hit the ground running in terms of, doing literature reviews. We actually had classes where they taught us how to do a literature review, step by step of how to do it, how to publish a manuscript, and things of that nature. And I really enjoyed, lastly, the professors that were within my program because they were very helpful, knowledgeable, and they really wanted to connect well with students and ensure that we would have a successful journey within grad school. And so that's definitely another tidbit that I would give you while you are researching programs that you're interested in attending. See if you can find students who are also in those programs and reach out to them and just ask them for their honest opinion on their program, because every program is different. Everybody's experience is different. There are pros and cons to every program. Nothing is ever really perfect. But if you find the program that fits or suits all of your needs or checks all of your boxes, then definitely go with it. So yeah, I would say those would be the valuable things that I've gained from my DRPH program.
Oh, that's a lot of things.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. It's completely okay. It's good. I think that's it for our questions. And so, oh,
Oh, I did have one
yeah.
private question where someone said, I'm not sure about, um, oh, they're relating to the AI comment that they heard that using AI costs gallons upon gallons of water. Yes, it does. Even you just saying thank you to ChatGPT is thousands and thousands of gallons of water that it's using to power those machines to generate that response. And so, yeah, I do tell people to be wary of using AI because it can, in terms of like its environmental footprint and impact, it can be a lot. But especially as of recently, with companies building AI infrastructures near low income communities, and just the toxic exposure that these communities are being faced with, just to be aware of that and knowledgeable of it. But I do think that this topic has definitely been coming up as of recently, with everything starting to transition to AI. There's definitely a lot of pros and cons to it. So just be mindful, do your research on it if that's what you choose to use.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, is there any other questions? I don't think I have any. If not, then we can move on. Um, our organization is publishing a magazine, which is like our first edition is already posted for our health and public health and ethics magazine, and you should check that out. I think the link should be sent in the chat if you want to like check it out. And then these are our socials, our website, our Instagram and our email. This should also be sent in the chat. And then if you guys any of you want to work with Science Health, our organization, you can join as a team member, like have your like blog or like magazine submitted on or like just like join our mailing list to like find like updates about like things like for example this conference. Thank you to our partners such as like Healthy Minds, Healthy Lives, Teens in Health, NY, Anoia, Global Health, and like the others. And thank you so much to everyone for joining, and like especially to you, Dr. Xiara, for taking an hour out of your time today. And feel free to join our next session tomorrow. It's from 6:15 to 7:15 p.m. EST for infectious disease, impact science. Actually, no, I think this one is being rescheduled actually because of an issue with Dr. Timothy's schedule. And if any of you sign up for that one, please check your emails. And thank you so much to everyone for coming today.